As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. One of the primary descriptors of a healthy personality is the word authenticity, and you've heard me use that term in plenty of times in other of my discussions. And at the core of authenticity are two primary ingredients. One is the ingredient of honesty. The other is the ingredient of vulnerability. You know, the authentic person says, what you see is what you get. They're going to be internally and externally consistent. And I just want you to know, if you get to know me, I'm just going to be true about who I am. And I can just go ahead and let you know I'm a mixed bag. That's just not something that comes as a shock. And let's just take that as our beginning point. The narcissist thinks, if I'm going to have to embrace that kind of thinking, where you want me to be authentic and honest and vulnerable, that's not going to work out too well for me. When you're in my presence, I'm more than happy to embrace my positives, but I don't want to be honest. And I don't want to be vulnerable about some of my questionable traits or some of my history that might not make me look good, or the experiences that I've been involved in. It might not end very well if I go into that space, so I'm just not going to do it, because you see, I'd lose my sense of power. And so narcissists, rather than going into that authentic path, they go into a path that's defined by posturing on a grand scale. By definition, they operate with an internal mandate that more or less says, admit the least amount of your negatives and play up your positives, and honesty is not necessarily required when you're doing that. And so with narcissists, what you can have is a package where they appear to be an angel on the outside, but they're the devil on the inside or behind the scenes. And I know that so many of you have experienced that with these individuals. And, somebody might come to you and say, oh, I know you're friends with this person. They're such a nice individual. And you're thinking, well, you ought to experience what it's like with me behind the scenes. You have that experience many times over. With that narcissist who tries to appear to be angelic when in fact there's this devilish stuff behind the scenes, truth is an inconvenience. I want you to just let that soak in. If I'm too honest, it's just going to blow my game. Let me give you an example of how this can play out. Let's suppose you have a man who's in a position where he in his business he encounters a lot of individuals, and he makes it a point to be friendly and an expert and very helpful in the way that he tries to talk with people about how he can assist them in getting whatever it is they need to get done business-wise, because he's there to save the day. And yet behind the scenes, this individual goes home and he's an absolute tyrant with his wife or her kids, and they all are afraid of him. And the anger is just way out of control. Those individuals that see him in public certainly wouldn't see that. Or let's suppose you have a woman who likes to get into a lot of volunteer kind of things and has a history of trying to be helpful in organizations that might do well in community kind of projects. And yet behind the scenes, that person is astonishingly judgmental towards those that she might even be helping, to the point where there's racism that she holds on to. She's highly materialistic, very shallow in the way that she thinks, but she looks good when she's doing that, the volunteer kind of stuff. Or you can have another person. Let's say you have someone who presents themselves as being pious and virtuous or pristine in the way that they live. And yet you find out quite a while later that they have a history of sexual abuse towards girls. And there's porn use and things of that nature that just makes you think, gosh, they're a dirty, lecherous kind of person. I never would have known by the way that they present themselves in public. I mean, the possibilities are so varied. Angel on the outside, devil on the inside. And when these narcissistic individuals do this, inadvertently, they guarantee their own imprisonment inside their own devious and even evil inclinations. It's terribly sad. Now, we have a term that we could use that would describe this, and it's what I would just call the narcissistic masquerade. And these individuals are wearing a mask, and sometimes it can take quite a bit of time for you to know them, to realize what's really going on behind the scenes. And so you have to be alert. Now, to give you a deeper idea of what this does to that individual, I want to give you kind of a compare and contrast. When you have that person who is the angel on the outside and the devil on the inside, they don't compare favorably towards the individual who's on team healthy and trying to do things right. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. That narcissistic person has decided public image is of utmost importance. Whereas the person who's going into the healthy direction thinks, you know what, when you get to know me, I'd really like for you to know my full package. In other words, you'll see that I am that mixed bag, and that's just part of us getting to know each other. The narcissist thinks, not with me, that doesn't work. Or in addition, you can see then that the narcissist is going to think, well, honesty is going to get me in trouble. I don't know that I need to go that path. If I'm too straightforward, that's going to set up a whole lot of possibilities I don't like. Whereas with the healthy person, they think honesty brings me a sense of freedom. Good. I don't have to live up to some sort of false image. With the narcissist, who's into this image crafting, their superficiality is persistent. They can give the impression that there's a whole lot going on inside, but it's like, no. I'm just trying to make things smooth. As long as it looks good on the surface, that's all I care about. Whereas with the healthy person, in-depth discussion and self-revelation is welcome. And if you have some things that you want to talk about on an in-depth kind of way to break through that shallow superficiality, you'll be open to that. With that narcissist who's into the posturing, blame shifting is rampant. It's like, well, if there is a problem in my life, let me explain to you what these other individuals did to screw me over. And this happened and that happened, and it wasn't really my fault. So there's a whole lot of victimization that they claim, and then it's always at somebody else's expense. Whereas with a healthy individual, there's a willingness to admit imperfections. And as much as I need to, as much as I need to talk about that, I don't really feel the need to try to find people to blame and have scapegoats. I'll take responsibility for who I am. Now, on top of that, then you can see that the narcissist in their image crafting is going to be heavily defended. And by that, I mean they use a lot of projection or denial or justification or deflection, or what we refer to as reaction formation. Whereas the healthy individual is thinking, I want to be open. And I don't have to use all my defenses. When we have things to talk about, I'm willing to receive input. Now, that leads us to yet another one, and that is with that person who's the outside angel but the inside devil, their moral compass is completely broken. Rationalization has taken over, and they can rationalize any kind of wrong and somehow or another say it's right when in fact it still is wrong. Whereas with the healthy individual, morality is not looked upon as some sort of requirement or duty. It just makes sense, and you want to do it that way. With that narcissist, they think, well, I have to be above you common folk out there, you idiots. Whereas the person on the healthy end of the spectrum says, well, I want to be able to relate to all classes and types of people. I don't want to have to make distinctions as to who I can and cannot or will not accept. The narcissist will strike out when there are conflicts, because in conflict, it's like some sort of problem is being talked about, and their anger is their way of saying, I can't deal with that, and I'm just going to create so much strain and tension, you'll be sorry you ever tried to bring up any faults of mine. Whereas with the healthy individual, they want to seek fuller understanding in the midst of conflicts. The narcissist, in their phoniness, they focus on my rights, The healthy person says, well, I've got my rights, but ultimately I need to look at them inside the context of my responsibilities. Narcissists ultimately are trapped by their own web of secrecy and deception, whereas the healthy person has a clear conscience and it's set up by healthy accountability. So you can see that these narcissistic individuals may try as best as they can to portray themselves as being, I'm pretty close to, I need my own cloud so I can play on my harp. I'm such a nice angel. And they can try to give that impression when in fact, like, no, you're down in the pits with that smoke and fire. There's a real devil behind the scenes. Just be honest about who you are. And narcissists, though, are so competitive and they're so invested in being superior over you. It's like, you're not going to hear anything like that from me. So understand that whatever pleading you have to make them be different is probably going to get you nowhere good. It's reasonable for you to base your interactions with them upon what you see. In other words, if they can't be authentic with you, then it's going to be minimal. And then the further that narcissist goes into their that phony, external being very inconsistent with the internal, you can decide, if you're going to play this little angel devil game, I can't go along with that. I can't afford to allow someone like that inside my inner circle. It doesn't work. Now, I hope this gives you an idea of what you might be dealing with as you realize that there's a person that has that narcissistic bent on the inside of your world. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so and hit the notification bell. We're going to keep more videos coming towards you. Awareness is your friend, and I want you to know who you are and know what you're dealing with so that you can move forward in your better direction. Now, as you're trying to come to terms with all of this, I know that it may be that you'll feel like you need some therapy. And I've been sponsored for years by the people at betterhelp.com, the online therapy resource. There's a link below the video that will take you to their website. You have to fill out some forms and answer a few questions, and then you get to select a therapist that can help you sift this out. Online therapy has proven to be quite effective, and it can be so helpful for someone to say, let's talk authentically, and let's figure out what we're dealing with. Get the help that you need and invest in yourself in that way. Now, in my retirement from my counseling practice, I've put together courses. And when I say courses, these are very extensive classes that you can pick up online. Each one has at least 25 teaching videos with with handouts and guided questions. There are links below here that will take you to that. They're also on my website. That we have the course Anger Games. We also have This Is Me, about setting boundaries, Free to Be, finding yourself despite those controllers, Ready, Set, Connect, about having healthy connections. And so in addition, on my website, you'll see that we have access to my webinars, which are very different from the courses. They're 90-minute presentations, and they've proven to be quite popular, along with access to my podcast, many articles, like a lot of articles, as well as my books. So we have lots of resources for you. Just know that the narcissist doesn't want to be honest. They don't want to be vulnerable. So it sets up that angel devil kind of contrast that they carry around on the inside. I hope you can see through it and recognize this cannot be a part of how I live, and I don't want to have much to do with it at all. Because I'm hoping, in contrast, you're going to decide, I want to be that internally and externally consistent kind of person. And as you do, it can carry you further and further down the path towards true and consistent peace.